Hello, thank you for joining me at Eagle and Rue. My name is Ankaret Varach Meredith, and I am a player in the SCA. I encourage you to check out sca.org if you want to know more about the organization, but I also encourage you to really take some time and watch these all the way through. These people have amazing insights and have amazing answers to my very simple questions. Please hit subscribe and like, and stay tuned for more videos. Who are you in the SCA, and what titles do you have?
I am Duke Sir Sean Kirkpatrick Tarragon. I am a Duke, an Earl, Viscount, Griffin of Artemisia. I just recently got my Key Cross, which is the Grant of Arms level award for arts and sciences in our kingdom, something I'm very proud of. I've been in the SCA since 1982.
So what is your persona?
So my persona is Irish-born, raised in the English courts. When I first got started in the SCA, my parents had taken me to practice. When I first started, hearing about persona development, I decided to stick with the Irish traditions that my mother had given me. The basic story was born on Small Island, just off the coast of Ireland. At some point, came into the services of an English knight who later became Duke Brian Tarragon. Interestingly enough, my time in the SCA actually closely followed that of a medieval child and young squire and young knight. I ended up essentially fostering to Brian. He took good care of me and definitely kind of gave me some good positive role model to follow. As my persona has kind of changed and shifted, it seems like it becomes more English all the time. My time period that I focus on is the 100 Years' War, Black Prince era. I've never really nailed down date of birth and that sort of thing, because one of the things about navigating that particular time period of history is this plague-like event that is not unlike this plague-like event we are suffering now, one which wiped out a third of European culture. Part of the persona story for that time period is, how do you survive the Black Plague, and what did you do? And that was always kind of nebulous. I never really kind of nailed that down, and I never had a date of birth for my persona. For me, the kind of culminating moment of my persona, kind of like the high point of my persona, would be, of all the battles of the 100 Years' War, it was the Battle of Poitiers in 1356. That was the one in which Captal de Buch captured King John of France and gave him ransom to Edward the Black Prince. Edward would have been about 26 years old. This is 10 years after Crecy, almost 50 years before Agincourt. That one kind of just strikes me as a good culminating, the high point of glory of my persona. The part of the story that I like to think my persona would have played in that would be in service of the Captal de Buch, who was actually a Gascon knight. So he was from Gascony. He wasn't English. He was actually French. But being in service to him and being part of the capturing of John, and then turning it over to Edward. And the best advice I've always been able to give to people is to pick a time and a place in history, and then be that. Try to be that person. Try to be somebody from that time and a place, and maybe who the Pope is, or maybe what you ate for breakfast, or maybe who your local constabulary was, or maybe it's just as simple as this was the big event that happened in my persona. And I think just picking a time and a place, that gives you a launching point, and you start reading books. I mean, I know a lot more about the 100 Years' War and Edward and that whole time frame than a lot of people do, because it's because that's the focus of my persona, and I think that's the best way to really get into it, is just pick a time and a place and then just jump in and start reading everything you can about it. I think having a persona, a background and a foundation, when you put all your stuff on in the morning, there's this idea that you want to be a French knight, you want to be an English knight in the 14th century and in that time period. And, you think about some of the day-to-day things that person would have done. And, just having that foundation, we talk a lot in the SCA about, the dream of the SCA, right? Which again, has always been this kind of sort of mythology. But for me, the dream moment is when you can, for just an instant, you can find that escape, and you can feel, for even just the briefest of moments, that you are there. And I think trying to improve my costuming and trying to make the clothes that I have fit more for that period, I think just overall creates an environment where those dream moments are more likely to happen very naturally and organically. You don't make those moments happen. You just create an environment in which those moments can naturally thrive on their own. Armored combat since the moment I saw it. I didn't even know that that's what we were doing. We were going to, the SCA was this thing that my parents had been doing for a while, and it was their thing that they do on Tuesday nights, and then they said we're going to do this thing, and so here we are getting dragged off to this thing that I have no idea what it is. I had no inkling of it. In fact, I saw the fighting before I knew that that's where we were going. Because we were driving by the park, and as we kind of drove by the side of the road, I saw the fighting down there, and I'm like, I don't know what you guys are doing, but I'm doing that. Heavy weapons combat is the hook of our organization. It's the thing that people see. That is, when you see people clashing and banging armor in the park, that draws your attention in ways in which. Watching people, doing drop spindling, spinning felt, it doesn't capture your attention in quite the same way. However, one of the things that separates us is the research of the Middle Ages, and that we are first and foremost, we are a research organization. Really in that context, the heavy weapons combat is just something that we make up along the way. It's its own modern martial art that it kind of created itself around a medieval-esque environment. SCA combat is probably the least authentic thing that we do. Without the arts, we're just a bunch of dudes hitting each other with sticks. And it is the arts and sciences, it is the research component of the arts and sciences, I think, that distinguishes us from many, many other organizations of a similar niche. That's what makes us more than just stick jocks. The best way to be part of the SCA is to serve it, and you can serve that either through the research of the arts and sciences, or you can serve that through being an officer or being an autocrat. And it's the three pillars of the society. Fighting, arts, and service. I definitely found a greater appreciation for those things as I've grown. But when I was 12 years old and I saw fighting for the first time, I'm like, well, here I go. Let's just do that.
So tell me a little bit about the garb of your time period.
In the 14th century, that time period, 1356, was commonly known as Fashion in the Age of the Black Prince, which is a book that I follow pretty closely that describes not only, it's interesting, that's a book there's not a lot of pictures in that book, so that book is much less of a how-to as it is a why. It is that applied archaeology that we're looking for. That this is what the garb was in the time. This is what clothing was. It wasn't garb. It wasn't a costume. It was clothing. This is what the clothing was in that time period. This is how it was constructed. These are the patterning methods that were used. 1340-ish is where we start seeing closer fitted garments. And so that's right at the beginning of that. Put a lot of research into the boxed-in tunic. For the longest time, I was wearing codardees, perfectly applicable to that time period. They were, as I put it, they were SCA chic. They were good for the 10-foot rule, where at the 10 feet or so, it looks like a codardee. And, but there was a point at which I realized that the codardee for the 14th century nobleman was, that's your business suit. People don't wear their business suit 24/7. They don't now, and they didn't then. You wore it when you were conducting business, and the court garb, the codardee type, when you were at court, and that's when business was being done. And so I'd realized that what would average Joe person wear in the Middle Ages, and that's how I ended up finding the boxed-in tunic, which is a tunic it's housed in the Varberg Museum in Sweden, where it was found in a peat bog not far from there. And it is one of the most complete sets of clothing that we have from the time period. Carbon dated somewhere between 1340 to 1370 in Sweden. One of the things I love about it is the fact that we know for a fact that this outfit existed in period, and it's remarkably well preserved. The whole outfit was the tunic, the cloak, the hood, the belt, the hose, the whole thing. It is one of the most complete outfits we have. That's kind of become something of a passion of mine. Compare that to the tea tunic that we used to make in the early days of the SCA, which uses just an ungodly amount of fabric because you're cutting it off the whole thing. This turns out to be a tunic that uses less fabric, is based on a period, like an extant piece that we pulled out of a bog. We know it exists. And it's actually easier to make. Something I've been really happy to be able to share with people. You know, we can give you something that is period, that is easy, that looks good, that doesn't have to be as well fit as a coterie is. And for people that are beginning in their costuming, it's a really good straight seams.
Do you have an example of one that you made?
Funny you should mention, it turns out I do. This is one that I made for the Arts and Sciences display that we had in January. And this is one that is more true to the replica extant, where I have used to put the gussets in the sleeves, and the gores on the side. That's the side gore. The gores on the sides are actually twice as wide as the gores on the front. And this is one that I did that it was all completely hand sewn. I don't know if you can see that. Okay, so that's basically what it is. It's a one-piece body. There's no shoulder seams. It's just one length of fabric up and over the shoulders with a hole cut in for the neck, sleeves, gussets, and gores. And yeah, this is one that I did all hand sewn. I've done some others that were hand sewn. This is the first one that I did that was intended to be more accurate replica of the extant. Because one of the things that I do on these is when I do the sleeve, rather than putting in gussets, I'll just do a tapered sleeve. So I'll make the arm side longer, and I'll just do a tapered sleeve, so I can just do one cut all the way down to the wrist measurement. It's just, again, one of those things that's just easier to do because, you know, I have the luxury of 60 wide fabric, and I don't need to take bits and scraps to make gussets. And I understand the purpose of gussets, but they're still just a pain in the ass. They don't add anything structurally unless you're doing something that is historical recreation. But this was one that I definitely wanted to be more true to the extant piece. So I was really, really happy with it. I did a back stitch on all the construction seams, and I did flat felt seams on that as well. Unfortunately, measurements were just a tad bit off, so it's a bit tight on me, but it should fit my son for the next few years to come. So I've recently also taken up brass etching, which is wholly modern techniques that I'm using for that. The resist that I use for that is a P&P blue, press and peel blue that you print off on a laser printer. You can get some really incredible detail on some things. The most recent thing I did there was I made the Griffin medallion for Yuri. I've also made, as Lachlan and Vigus were stepping down from their second reign, ducal leaves for them that I attached to their coronet. That's something that's still kind of a new art for me, but definitely enjoy that. Costuming is my main focus. I've done some silk banners. Cooking, when I do a feast, honestly, for the longest time, my priority has always been edible first and period later. As I've done more and more of that, I'm finding those resources to have a little bit of both. I did some block printing. That's something I want to do more of because there's still definitely some process improvement that I need for that. But block printing is some wonderful stuff. Being able to decorate the fabrics as they were in period were really neat. One of the other ways that I like doing that is with gold leafing, where you can do gilded fabric. And that's another one of those things that we have, I have the period documentation for that. The Sanini book, Elaborata Arts, period manuscript, 1500s, I think. Being able to do some of the stuff they did with the techniques that they did is fun. I think I've dabbled in a lot of things, and every once in a while, something comes up, have a need, try to make your encampment or your panoply a little more period. My priority is the costuming. One of the other things that I do exceptionally well is the fitting for the Gothic fitted dress or the self-supporting kirtle, the 14th century kirtle. I've done a number of those for people throughout the kingdom. That's something I really enjoy doing. I think probably the thing I enjoy most about that is that self-supporting kirtle, it is a second skin type of outfit. It's an outfit that allows you to accentuate the parts that you want to show off, and it lets you hide the parts that you don't. A lot of people have, body conscious. Being able to give a woman a dress that makes her feel good, give you a dress that makes you feel sexy, makes you feel good in it. I love that. I love being able to provide that for people. And so that's one of the other things that I'm pretty good at. The one thing that we've always asked, and I don't know if it's emphasized as much anymore, but it is a reasonable attempt at pre-17th century costuming. And that's it. We just ask that you try. If you've got your T-tunic and your sweatpants and your tennis shoes, that's fine. That's a reasonable attempt, especially for day 3. I've often said that in a lot of ways the SCA has kind of become a victim of its own success, wherein, you show up to an event and you see people in full-on, 14th century or 15th century or Mongolian, and you see these really spectacular outfits, and there's people that feel like they have to try to keep up with that, as it were, and that this is the standard, and not realizing that most of those people that have those really nice outfits have been in for 5 or more years. And I think we have to continue to be open to that reasonable attempt. That's how we get people in. Once they get hooked, it really doesn't take much for them to want more. And when they find out that, yeah, I can show you how to make this boxing tunic that is based on this 14th century extant piece, and we can make you one of those in a day, and I can give you the tools you need to make that on your own, and you can make it out of cotton if you want to, or here's some good sources for where you can get linen. The bar has definitely been raised over where it was even when I started, 30 plus years ago. But the access to resource and materials is far more available now than it was then as well. Even though the quality of, like, say, entry-level garb has gone up, the ability to get that with the same amount of effort and with not a whole lot of, you don't have to be super rich to be able to get into something that is beyond just that reasonable attempt. We just want you to try, because we know that if you try and you show up to, after about a year, you're going to want better outfits, and you're going to find the people that are going to help you with that.
If somebody wanted to reach out to you and ask you more questions, how would they find you?
I am ubiquitous on the Facebooks. I'm listed under Sean Oppenheimer on Facebook. Pretty much anybody's welcome to get a hold of me there. I have a YouTube channel that is under Duke Sean 01, fighting videos for some of the best fighters in the world, as well as some recent videos I did with some basic stick mechanics, so on how to get started on this. Facebook is definitely the easiest way to do that. Actually send a message, even though it goes into that Facebook messaging, and I try to get back to folks. I'm pretty open and accessible and available that way.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to be on my channel and answer my very curious questions. Is there anything else you want to leave our audience with today?
I've been in the SCA for since childhood, and people come and go for at various times and for various reasons in their lives, and the SCA has definitely given me more than I could ever hope to give back. But that's one of the things I'm trying to do with as much as I teach, is to give back to an organization that has given so much to me. Try to enjoy it as much as you can for as long as you can. It's been a great experience for me and for my family. I'm happy to be part of it, and I expect to be around for a long time to come. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. This has been a joy.